Hello, all. I hope your summer is going well, and if you live in Los Angeles and happen to just experience the heat wave that hit us Friday, I hope you're alive. Palm Springs weather, fun times. I thought I would write a short long-form piece as I haven't in a while, and with the mid-season point upon us, trade winds blowing, etc., I felt it might be fun to pontificate. As always, I understand my viewpoints are too sensible for many of you, so by no means think I feel you need to align yourself with me. If you prefer to feel all is well because you lack perspective, e.g., you are young and don't know better, or brainwashed by fantasy baseball and sabermetrics gurus, by all means, get thrilled over nothing. Life is full of disappointments. The Dodgers have been a constant for 3 decades now. I have been getting dribs and drabs on local sports talk radio, the bloggers, the non-controversial beat writers who don't want to lose their clubhouse access, that the Dodgers are back in it. Awesome, they're a top team, easily a World Series contender. Name the headline. It's hard on Twitter to summarize thoughts in the limited amount of space, especially to passers-by who don't have a frame of reference and context. To some of you, wisely, you get it. In a nutshell, I have been a Dodgers fan all my life, and somewhere around the time the ball club was sold to Fox, I started to formulate my current crusty exterior. I witnessed a wealthy entertainment company come in and buy my beloved team to create a local sports network. Oh sure, while their intentions were selfish, they did open up payroll, which at certain times could have helped you and I, the suckers who just root for our team, as a pleasant diversion from everyday life. The problem there was Kevin Malone was hired because he was a rising name in baseball circles and told Fox what they wanted to hear, that he could simultaneously rebuild a farm that Peter O'Malley let fall apart and at the same time buy a winner in one off-season. No respectable individual would claim they could do one or the other immediately, let alone both at the same time. Kevin Malone, as some of you might recall, was an insecure guy who called himself the sheriff, and wanted to make his mark. He was Donald Trump before Donald Trump's political interests, or Andrew Friedman when Andrew Friedman was not getting laid in college. Malone's gaffes caused Fox to close the vault, and even though Don Evans, you'd like him, kids, he was all about data before it was cool, replaced Malone, they had a strong enough foothold on their sports network empire not to trust baseball executives with any more of their money. That led to Frank McCourt. Like Fox, McCourt bought the team. Well, that's not correct. McCourt was given the team by that era's shady commissioner, Bud Selig. Bud and Fox were in bed financially, so when Fox wanted out of baseball ownership, Bud did whatever they wanted to make that happen. McCourt was handed the team without any serious wherewithal, and Fox co-signed to make it happen. McCourt's interests were as selfish as Fox's. He wanted fame, wealth, and a lavish lifestyle. It was a low-risk investment, and he exploited the fans' loyalty as he got daily haircuts, mansions, and eventually was forced to sail after stadium visitors got beaten into comas, checks to Vin Scully bounced, and fans finally boycotted the games. The Dodgers were back on the market, and the third molesting uncle came along, a wealthy investment firm that used a Trojan horse in the guise of smiling Magic Johnson to once again sucker fans into thinking better days were ahead. You can read my brilliance in archived columns here, explaining what was happening each step of the way. It wasn't like I was a genius, but I created Dodger Therapy as a place for all of us long-abused fans to talk it out. The problem, most people are either unaware, stupid, or easily conned. At the time, there was no Donald Trump to compare this to, but as we are all aware, nowadays there's a great divide, and for various reasons. One side is perfectly positive that the idiocy and lies make perfect sense in some way. Magic knew about as much about baseball as your grandmother did, and that's an insult actually to your grandmother. He was used for his smile, his connection to the city, and to make a large investment firm buying a baseball team seem somehow plausible. It has since come out, I told you years ago, again, go back through all the old columns for yourself, that the Guggenheim Group apparently used money from investors inappropriately and are under investigation for it. Their motive, of course, was to make a shitload of money off the Dodgers' pending TV deal and the fans' stupidity. They overpaid $1 billion to McCord and also let him retain stadium parking lots because the idea of paying $2 billion total for an $8 billion TV deal seemed a tidy profit. McCord put in almost nothing when he bought the Dodgers from Fox and ended up massively rich, so much so his ex-wife sued after noticing how her pasty, deadbeat husband dealed his way into a financial windfall due to everyone using the Dodgers as a money-making pyramid scheme. My point has always been to call out what is wrong, where injustice is happening, where hypocrisy is occurring and what could be done about it. I know I am not a voice anyone really listens to, not rosy enough, not full of shit enough. My take sounds bad because, well, after 30 years of mediocrity, it should. That is a long time. 30 years. More than many fans' entire lifetimes. Of course, then some old crackpot saying, Andrew Friedman sucks, or, Guggenheim is screwing you, does not resonate. How could it? Maybe if I offered a bag of weed or a vape device with each Twitter post, I'd get more interest. Note to self. Over recent years, I have grown tired of battling with idiots online. I do not mind if you have a different opinion than I do, but at least make a credible defense of your point of view. Sadly, I have wasted far too many years observing this downward trend, so when some fresh voice pops out of the woodwork, it's easy to defend myself against such ill-informed ideas. Follow the team for half a century, then come back to me. Each year that has passed recently, the fans get their hopes up based on what they feel a baseball team should do, so therefore the Dodgers should too. I agree with that, but unfortunately, what many do not get is quite intentionally Guggenheim hired Andrew Friedman and his band of dummies due to their ability to make magic on less resources. I cannot fully explain how it is Guggenheim wants to cost-cut while entrusting their boy to overspend on bullshit, but that's the interesting thing here. More interesting is how no matter what Friedman peddles, fans eat it up. If he does nothing, or almost nothing, at the trade deadline, he's heralded for his genius. If he sits out the winter while every other team improves, he's brilliant. If he overspends on marginal players or those who never will play a game at Dodger Stadium, he's crafty. No, I'm here to make it known that he's just an idiot and has no clue what he's doing. May have worked in Tampa, since the stage was much smaller, but it isn't working here. Today I flipped on local LA radio briefly to catch Vic the Brick and Fred Roggin blathering about how the Dodgers need to trade prospects for Orioles star Manny Machado and Zach Britton. They reasoned, prospects are well, just that, perspective, and these guys are stars. I can't argue with that logic, and I have made similar statements hundreds of times myself. Flaws to their comments, and those in all the blogs and mainstream newspaper pieces I read is A, they're assuming the Dodgers actually want to go all in, and B, that these moves would do it, put them on par with the best teams in baseball, most of which are powerhouses in the AL. Let me explain. Again, this is mostly to summarize for those who may not know much about me and my ideas. While it's traditional to say, hey, the trade deadline is coming up, the Dodgers should get this star, that star, you're not being honest with yourself. You're considering the Dodgers a well-run, large-market baseball team. They are not. They haven't been since Andrew Friedman came into town. You are assuming also the Dodgers want to win, really win. No, Guggenheim is happy just getting butts in the seats and selling beer, merch and parking passes. At this point, Guggenheim is more concerned with investigations than the product on the field. If the Dodgers were all in, last year was when they should have been there. Last year they had a team that ran away with the West and had options available to cement a championship available. Instead, they waited to the last few minutes before the trade deadline to get the Texas Rangers executives to bling and ended up with Yu Darvish as their savior, as well as a couple marginal, bad relief pitchers. Fans were ecstatic. Of course, I had Darvish on one of my fantasy teams, and understood how poor he had been most of the season. The Dodgers could have added Justin Verlander instead, but that would have meant paying him in 2018, so they let Houston acquire him instead. That one non-move cost the Dodgers the 2017 World Series as well as to perpetuate the constant revolving door in the Dodgers rotation this season. If you think it isn't fair to criticize the Dodgers for what they did versus what Houston did, do some research on market size between LA and Houston, the time between World Series appearances, etc. My point is, a little team like Houston took last year seriously, a big team like the Dodgers did not. We then went through a winter where Houston added an ace and pretty much every other team worked to shore up needs. The Dodgers did nothing all off-season and fans of course lauded them as geniuses. You just want to waste money, the sycophants would argue. What about trades? I might counter. You want to give up our future. You cannot argue with people anymore, they resort to bullying and if they falter, their pack will take up their fight. As a lifetime fan, I just want a team that more or less resembles a team I followed my whole life, or even a very good team that looks slightly different. Your patriotism, tying the current landscape to our game once more, is immediately questioned. After all, if nothing else, we know nowadays it's not about your loyalty to the game or your country, but the individuals. You can't be a Dodger fan and say something bad about Andrew Friedman, and you can't be an American and say something bad about Donald Trump. Both are kings, tyrants we must bow before and kiss their feet. Our own self-interests are secondary, third, fourth to what makes them look good. So now, fans, like this time last year, are waiting for the big deals to occur. One of two things will happen: A, no deals will occur, or very minor ones to appease the rabble and the team will fall short but say, we tried. We were in on all those stars, or B, they learned from inaction last July and will deal for some star power. Of course, if B were really much of an option, why didn't they learn during the Hot Stove League? They assumed their oft-injured pitchers and inexperienced kids were enough? Let's just consider now Manny Machado and Zach Britton, since Vic and Fred brought them up today. Could the Dodgers be working on a deal for both? Sure. The Orioles would love to get rid of them and get something for their rebuild, but would a team probably not looking to keep Machado beyond this year deal anything of serious worth for him? I can see if the Yankees did, or Boston, or Chicago, as they would consider resigning him, but the Dodgers? While the Dodgers could afford the price Machado would want, and no doubt he'd be thrilled to be in a large market, would they run up the credit card immediately after paying it down? Would Machado go back to third with Corey Seager coming back? If so, what happens to Justin Turner? I guess you could go Turner at first, Machado at third and the ghost of Davey Lopez at second, but until I see Andrew Friedman target a real star and sign him, I can't believe it. Now if Machado was an untested Cuban kid, or an oft-injured journeyman starting pitcher, sure. Everyone is up in arms because the Halos took 2 of 3 from the Dodgers in Anaheim this weekend. They immediately say, the Dodgers need Machado. They need offense. Well, I'd say they just scored 30 runs recently in a series versus Pittsburgh and have set home run records, so perhaps not. I would say the Dodgers' entire offensive approach is feast or famine and has been since Moneyball came into play. No one hits line drives, no one settles for a single when runners are in scoring position, no one steals a base, etc. It's all about swinging hard, every time, and get that home run. It's why a guy like Max Muncy can come out of nowhere and swing from the heels every at-bat, and sit near the break with 20 homers and merely 38 RBI. Everyone wants him to be an all-star, by the way, which is silliness. Is offense the Dodgers' biggest need? So you have to believe the Dodgers would go all in now when they didn't last year or this past winter, and that they feel Machado makes the difference and can get them back to the World Series, or hopefully win it, when last year and this winter the prospects were too important to move. You also have to factor in that they'd be okay losing prospects for a rental, or spending a fortune to keep Machado. All of that is worth mulling over. Then there's Britton. Now in my opinion, and I heard it echoed last night during ESPN's telecast, you need a rotation capable of logging innings, a bullpen, and a closer to win. They brought this up, as I have, in criticism of Moneyball's patchwork approach to a game, where 9 pitchers are trotted out nightly, starters going anywhere from 3 to 5 innings, and no real setup man to speak of. Obviously, of many issues I have with Andrew Friedman and his philosophies, the fundamental ignoring of pitching as vital is first and foremost. So would a setup man for closer Kenley Jansen be helpful? Why, of course. By the way, Kenley being the only representative to the All-Star game, as of now, for the Dodgers pitching staff should tell you all you need to know. As for Britton, he was the best relief pitcher in baseball in 2016, but this is 2018. He isn't good this year, and while might be helpful if thrown into a Machado deal, is certainly no guarantee to give the Dodgers a lockdown bullpen. A sexy name, for sure, but the solution to Paul Goldschmidt? I don't believe so. We have a few weeks to see what will happen. Personally, I'd respect Andrew Friedman more if he did what the Yankees did a few years ago and traded players away for a short-term rebuild. If he got some talent, then smartly went shopping, both in free agency and trade, and revamped the roster for 2019 and beyond. But this is like asking a chicken to give you milk. It would require Andrew Friedman to undergo a regarding Henry experience and completely change his personality. He is happy tinkering, making 10 moves when 1 or 2 would suffice, and taking the long way around and problem that presents itself. He's the classic scenario of the man being too proud to ask for directions. Could the Dodgers win if they dealt kids for Machado and Britton? Sure. They could win doing nothing. Wait, win the World Series? I wouldn't go that far. I think as it stands now they could win the West or make the wild card, but realistically, as Vic noted today, they are pretty thin if you look at their lineup versus NL powerhouse lineup. Of course, the little 1988 Dodgers teams beat the Bash Brothers, Eck, Dave Stewart and the rest. I just don't see any reason to believe this team has magic, or at least any more pixie dust as last year's team. Maybe more desperate, but not more magic. Personally, I would say the best thing that could happen is Guggenheim is found guilty of fraud, is forced to sell, Andrew Friedman and his clowns are pushed out by a new owner, and we start all over again. A new uncle to promise us a better life. Hey, it beats what we have now. Will that owner be kinder to us, consider our feelings and not use us to finance some scheme? Probably not, but then the world has become a pretty dark place, so to assume there are rainbows and unicorns anymore is probably not realistic. Unless of course you are a fan of a team that seems to try year in and year out, isn't using algorithms to calculate bare minimums to acquire wins, etc. My suggestion is forget Machado, forget Britton, buy yourselves a Yankees, Red Sox or Astros hat. If you are adverse to that, try a Mariners, Cubs or Brewers hat. Less wear and tear on your psyche and your doctor will praise you for your reduced blood pressure.